What's going on, y'all? I'm here in the snake room and I had the idea that I thought it would be pretty fun to do a video about some common snake myths, things that I hear all the time, and just a couple outlandish things that I have heard over time and so far throughout my career working with snakes and with venomous reptiles and things like that. You'll have to excuse the background noise. I've got a cranky rattlesnake over there behind me and he's just buzzing away. But anyways, I figured I'd just go ahead and get down to it. So, fun, common snake myths. Let's go. All right, so when it comes to snakes and their tails, there are some very common but very wrong myths when it comes to that kind of stuff. One of the more popular ones that I hear pretty regularly is that snakes that have a bright yellow tail tip will sting you and envenomate you. So that means young cottonmouths and copperheads and pygmy rattlesnakes. I've heard tons of folks say that if they can sting you with that tail and it's bright yellow because there's venom or poison in it, and that is simply not true. The reason some species of snakes have those bright yellow tails, and they generally have them when they're fresh babies and young snakes, it's actually called a caudal lure. So what that means is usually these snakes are ambush predators. They'll sit in an ambush spot, coiled up, and they'll wiggle that bright yellow tail, kind of like a fishing lure, to drive it or bring in a prey item. So that they cannot sting you. No snake is going to sting you with its tail and envenomate you. So that's just absolutely false. I've also heard that coach whip snakes will chase people down and whip them with their tail, and that's how they got their name. That's absolutely false. That doesn't happen. I promise you. I've caught a lot of coach whips in the wild. I've kept them in captivity and taken care of them. And coach whips are not aggressive. They're not going to chase you down. They're not going to whip you with their tail. They're also not going to bite onto their tail and roll after you in a hoop. I've heard people say that as well, which is kind of funny to me. There is no snake on the planet that's going to do that. And then another one revolving around snake tails is that mud snakes will actually stab you with their tail. And while it is true they have a specialized scale at the tip of their tail that's a little bit sharp, they're not going to stab you with it. Mud snakes are one of the most docile, harmless, non-venomous snakes that we probably have here in Florida. So, all right, now on to the next topic. All right, so these next few are going to be specifically about venomous snakes. So, first one, you can tell if a snake is venomous if it has a triangular or diamond-shaped head. Big myth, very big myth. While yes, some of our native pit vipers do have a triangular or diamond-shaped head, just looking at that one thing cannot tell you whether or not a snake is venomous. We have tons of harmless, non-venomous snakes here in Florida that when they feel threatened, they can kind of swell up or puff up their bodies and make their head look triangular in shape. So that is not true. Do not rely on head shape to determine whether or not a snake's venomous. Another really common myth is if you look at a snake's pupil shape or eyes. If they have round eyes, they're non-venomous. If they have elliptical eyes, they're venomous. That is a big myth that a lot of people really believe and really lean on when it comes to snake ID. And once again, totally false. So just like our eyes, rattlesnake eyes, copperheads, cottonmouths, all of their pupils can dilate. So yes, a lot of times they are elliptical, but depending on light and the situation, they can dilate and be more rounded in shape. Not to mention the coral snake has a round pupil as well. So that is just not a good thing to be relying on, and another very popular snake myth. Another one, and one of my favorites, baby snakes or pygmy rattlesnakes, both combined, are more deadly than adult snakes or larger venomous snakes. This is a big one, and I hear it all the time, but that is false, totally false. So here in Florida, our baby venomous snakes and our tiny pygmy rattlesnake definitely is not more dangerous than, say, a large eastern diamondback or a large canebrake rattlesnake or even a large cottonmouth. And this is referring to their venom composition and their bite. I want to go on record and say there's never been a recorded death from a bite from a pygmy rattlesnake. So they are definitely not more dangerous than something like a large eastern diamondback. Now, going back to the babies, a lot of people think they can't control the amount of venom that they inject, but from the moment they are born, a venomous snake can absolutely control how much venom they inject with each bite. They can inject no venom, which is called a dry bite. They could give you a full load if they wanted to, or anything in between. There was a really cool video going around social media a couple years back from Venom Lab. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was M Toxin's Venom Lab, where they were milking venom from a large African viper, and the fangs pierced through the membrane to collect the venom, and they injected, and then that snake pulled one fang out, stopped injecting with that fang, re-pierced the membrane, started injecting again, and did the same thing and kind of walked those fangs through that membrane. So they have full control over how much venom is being injected, whether it's coming out of both fangs, one fang, so they're very, very in control of that. So just to reiterate, baby snakes are not more dangerous, they're not more deadly, and they can control their venom. You know, another thing that I like to break down for people is, if you think about it, I'll use eastern diamondbacks for example. A baby eastern diamondback is going to have a small head, and in turn small venom glands, and a smaller venom yield than a big 5-foot adult. So I would rather not get bit by a venomous snake, never have, hopefully never will. But if I had to choose between a baby snake and an adult snake, I would much rather be bitten by a baby snake. So that's another big one that I am always happy to debunk. So, myth. On to the next topic of myths to debunk. Snake repellents or snake deterrents. This is a big one. People ask me all the time, and I've heard some absolutely crazy things, but I'm gonna tell you all right now, there is no effective snake repellent or snake deterrent. So that stuff that you can go to any Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, wherever, and buy the snake away stuff, doesn't work. It's a waste of money, and I don't want you to waste money, so please don't. I've seen time and time again, I've got friends that relocate snakes, I relocate snakes. I've seen rattlesnakes coiled up next to bags of opened snake away, and it's been all around the house. This stuff just doesn't work, and it's a waste of money. The next one that goes hand in hand with that is mothballs. Once again, mothballs also do not work as a snake repellent, and if you didn't know this, placing mothballs outdoors is actually illegal, and you could face up to $10,000 in fines from the EPA. So please don't do that. It's really not safe for our environment. It's also, you know, could cost you a big old fine. Now, as far as the natural remedies, you know, people using ammonia, garlic, onions, lemongrass. I've heard people say that human hair around your house will deter snakes. I've heard people use horse hair. I've heard people say if you leave a bowl of milk outside of your house, it'll deter snakes. And all of that is completely untrue. There's no science, there's no data that backs any of that. And honestly, none of that even really makes sense. There's no reason that any of those things would deter snakes in the first place. It's all just a really big myth. So if you're doing any of that stuff, I hate to break it to you, but unfortunately it's not working. And if by chance you're not seeing any snakes, it is mere coincidence. And you probably do still have snakes in your yard, you're just not seeing them. So, all right, so this next myth is a really big one, and it's one that I talk about all the time. And it's the myth that snakes are aggressive. And this counts for cottonmouths too. Like I said, that's a myth. All of our native snakes that we have here in Florida that we're encountering on a day-to-day basis, they're not aggressive. I've got snakes here in my house, as you can see behind me, and I do relocations and I work with them professionally. And you know, I can tell you right now, snakes can be defensive if they are scared, stressed out, put in a position where they can't flee. They're going to fight, but they are not aggressive. If snakes were truly aggressive, we would never be able to leave our homes. We couldn't walk out our front door without a whole bunch of snakes sitting there waiting for us to attack us. And that never happens. You never hear that. It's not on the news. It's not in the newspapers. But that's what it would be like if snakes actually were aggressive. But once again, they're not. A lot of times that comes from misinterpreted behavior. And yes, some snakes are quicker to defend themselves than others. But once again, that's being defensive, not aggressive. If you give a snake an opportunity to leave, it'll absolutely do that. But there's a lot of species that they will, as they're making their escape, they're going to keep their eye on you the entire time. Now, some that come to mind are eastern diamondbacks. If you give them plenty of space, they'll go on their merry way, but if you are still within sight, they're going to be completely focused on you that entire time. Coach whips are the same way. Black racers, if they don't have a quick escape route, they're going to keep their eyes on you while they book it, and as soon as they see the opportunity, they're going to flee. And I think the myth that snakes chase people also comes from misinterpreted behavior. I have worked with everything from rattlesnakes to corn snakes to mambas to cobras, taipans, arboreal vipers, and I haven't been chased by a snake. And that doesn't just include snakes I've worked with in captivity. I go out, I go on hikes, I look for snakes recreationally, I go camping, I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman. I'm around wildlife pretty often, and I can say that in my 24 years of life, I've never been chased by a snake. So I think what this really boils down to is just folklore. I mean, everybody knows somebody who has been chased by a cottonmouth. And in this day and age, people have videos for pretty much everything. And whenever someone tells me that they were chased by a cottonmouth, or their cousin or their brother or their mom or whoever, I'm like, all right, well, show me the video, show me where it happened. And for Pete's sakes, there was a video of a gentleman that blew up all over the news and Facebook. He was being chased down by a mother mountain lion. So I mean, if we have videos of that, why is there nowhere a video of someone being chased by a cottonmouth? That's because it doesn't happen. Snakes do not chase people. The biggest thing is if you or I am standing in between a snake and somewhere that snake knows is a safe spot, the snake's going to try and get there. So whether that's going through your legs, over your feet, in your general direction, that's not chasing you. That's trying to get away. You just happen to be in the spot that snake wants to go. And I totally get it, especially for someone who's uncomfortable around snakes. Maybe that instance right there, if that does happen, you have a snake coming your way and coming your way quickly. You don't know any better. I can absolutely see where someone might misinterpret that as chasing. But once again, it's not. Snakes do not chase people. And that leads me into some more cottonmouth myths that I think I need to talk about. All right, the fearsome and dreaded cottonmouth. So I have already talked about how snakes don't chase people and snakes are not inherently aggressive. The cottonmouth does fall under those categories. They do not chase people and they are not inherently aggressive. They're not going to go out of their way to try and bite you. But there are a couple other things I just kind of feel like I need to put out there to be super clear about everything. So some more snake myths about cottonmouths. Cottonmouths jump out of trees, swim after people, climb into boats, come up to fishermen. There are breeding balls of cottonmouths in the water. All of those things, myths. So cottonmouths generally are not going to be found in trees. They are a heavy-bodied viper. They are not arboreal. Yes, you can maybe find them in some shrubbery overhanging the water, but a lot of times when you are kayaking, boating, swimming, or walking down a stream bed and you see snakes draped over the water in trees and whatnot, usually non-venomous water snakes, not cottonmouths. That's just not typically a behavior they're going to see. So if, someone ever has had a snake fall into their boat, jump into their boat, fall into their boat, I can guarantee it's pretty certainly not a cottonmouth that's doing that. And if it did happen, it was just by chance that snake fell out of a tree and into your boat. But I promise you, they're not jumping out of trees to come get us. Next up, cottonmouths chasing people in the water, chasing after boats, climbing into boats, coming up to fishermen on the banks. Yeah, that happens. But is it an aggressive thing? Absolutely not. Cottonmouths are very inquisitive animals. But aside from that, they are very opportunistic when it comes to eating, and they're very, very generalist. So in the wild, their diet is primarily going to be things like fish and frogs and pretty much anything else that can fit in their mouth. So if you're on a boat fishing, if you're on the bank fishing, you smell like fish. They are looking for an easy meal, so they're going to come up and investigate and look and see if there's something they can eat. That doesn't necessarily mean they're coming up to that boat or coming up to that bank because they want to bite you or whatever. So that's not happening. We just got to understand we live in Florida, we live in the country. is something we got to learn to live alongside and live with. So once again, yeah, you might encounter a copper or a cottonmouth, but it's not coming up to you because it wants to bite you. It's looking for something to eat. And I've seen cottonmouths run over frogs and toads off of the pavement. I've seen them eat other dead things like fish scraps, other snakes. I have a friend who has a really unique story. She was cutting a cottonmouth free from some fishing netting that was tangled up in. While it was doing that, the snake regurgitated a recent meal, and it was floating in the water right there. Another cottonmouth swam up and actually ate that regurgitation. So that just goes to show, these things are like trash cans. They'll eat just about anything, and because of that, they're looking for an easy meal. You know, they're gonna come up and encounter people, but it's not in an aggressive manner at all. So I just wanted to clear that up for everybody, because I know everyone is afraid of cottonmouths. Everyone's got a story, but they're really not all they're made out to be. All right, I'm gonna try and not make this video too long, just because if y'all are like me, you have a hard time sitting through a long video, and this is probably gonna be the longest video I've made. So I'm gonna try and wrap this up and off the top of my head, rapid fire through some more snake myths that I can think of. So, nests of rattlesnakes and breeding balls of cottonmouths. No, not happening here in Florida. As far as the cottonmouth thing goes, they're not breeding in huge masses in the water. You know, that's not something that happens. Sometimes if you see a large amount of snakes all intertangled up, we do have garter snakes here in Florida that'll do that, and some of our water snakes will do that as well. But with most of our vipers, which cottonmouths are, they're pit vipers, if there's more than one male present, they're gonna do a combat, and the female's gonna be hanging out somewhere near there, and then they're gonna go and do their thing. There's not gonna be a huge mating ball of cottonmouths. As far as rattlesnake dens go in Florida, that's something that we don't get down here. Up in the Northeast, out west, they have hibernacula, where they're going to overwinter in one specific location that they return to every year. Here in Florida, we don't really have that. We don't have species of rattlesnakes that are communal. They're not all going to be hanging out in one area. You know, you may get more than one rattlesnake in a gopher tortoise burrow. That's really going to be the extent of it. So you don't have to worry about, you know, the ground giving out underneath your feet and falling into a pit of rattlesnakes, because that's just not a behavior we see here in Florida. Another one that's pretty ridiculous, but is a big one, is that the government dropped rattlesnakes out of helicopters to help repopulate areas. That just never happened, and I'm gonna leave it at that. There's another one that people will fight you tooth and nail over, and that's that copperheads smell like cucumber, or that if you're ever outside walking through the woods, whatever, and you smell cucumber out of nowhere, that means that there's a copperhead somewhere near you. Once again, that's a myth. There is absolutely no scientific backing in that. It's never been proven. I've worked with a bunch of copperheads, and I've smelled their musk, I've smelled their feces, and there's nothing that even smells close to cucumbers when it comes to copperheads. I don't know where that started, why, how, but it is something that people really do strongly believe and will probably fight you over. I've seen that firsthand, but I just like to put that on record that copperheads do not smell like a cucumber. See, I don't know if I can think of any more off the top of my head. Like I said, I don't want this video to run too long. So if you like this video, let me know. I'd like to continue to keep doing educational videos whenever I have the time. If there's any myths that you think I might have missed, drop them in the comments below. If you have questions about things that I talked about that maybe you're unsure and want some more clarifications, feel free to shoot me a message or ask down below in the comments section. Or even if there's something that you've heard that you're maybe unsure of, like maybe, you know, your grandfather, your parents, your good friend, they told you something about snakes in general, or a specific kind of snake and you're not sure about, yeah, you know, approach me about that as well. Whether you want to drop it in the comment section, shoot me a message privately. I'm always happy to talk about snakes and debunk myths and help spread the word and spread education and, you know, shed a positive light on these animals that are just probably some of my favorite animals on the planet. So with that, thank y'all for watching, and I will see you next time.